What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Week 17 Premier League reviews. So let's get right into it. We had a bunch of midweek games, 3 on Tuesday, 7 today on Wednesday. So yeah, let's talk about them. First of all, big result for Burnley, 1-0 against Stoke, because not only does it extend what has been a great start to the season for them, but because Arsenal and Liverpool drew today, it means they end this week in fourth place, and that is huge for Burnley. I mean, they're a team that has been sort of up and down over the past decade or so. Yeah, they've had a couple good seasons, had a couple bad seasons, but overall, they've been a decent team. This year, they've really stepped it up, and it hasn't really been. It's not like they brought in some new players that have just been tearing it up in the league. Like when Leicester won the league a few years back, Mahrez and Vardy and Conte were just absolutely destroying it. And you could tell those players were special. For Burnley, they don't really have anything like that. They've just got a very solid team this year. And so the fact that they've managed to get themselves up into fourth place is just a testament to what a good job Sean Dyche is doing there. He's doing a really good job of keeping them not just a bunch of individuals who are really good. He's keeping the team mentality and keeping them fighting together, and it's won them some very important games this season. And this is just another one. It's not necessarily the most convincing result. It's at home against Stoke, who've been struggling, but it's still another win. It's another win for them. It puts them even higher up the table. So Burnley fans have got to be loving life right now. Stoke fans, on the other hand, have got to be wondering, is it time to move on? From the reports that I heard before this week started, I did hear that Mark Hughes was being given over the next 4 games, this being the first of those 4, because over the next 4 games before they meet Chelsea, it's going to be a run of games that not necessarily are easy, because no Premier League game is easy, but they're teams that are in the lower half of the table as well. West Ham is down there. I think they're also facing, I think, Brighton maybe? And then one other team. I can't remember exactly who it is now, but they're all teams that they should be getting good results against, and 2 of those games are at home as well. So I still think they should give Mark Hughes at least until the January transfer window, give him a little bit of funds to spend, because I think he could possibly get something out of January. It would possibly help them save themselves. I don't think it's a case of a bad manager. I just think their recruitment over the summer wasn't good enough. They lost Arnautovic, who has been a big part of their system for the past few years. So yeah, they didn't really improve up top that much. Shaqiri is doing okay, but he doesn't really have anybody to find. Arnautovic making runs in behind. He doesn't have that player to find anymore. Crouch isn't good enough. So yeah, it's definitely something they want to look at doing in January, finding somebody who can get them the goals that they need right now. But yeah, so another bad result for them, another good result for Burnley. Moving on to the next game, Huddersfield versus Chelsea. Chelsea wins 3-1. It was a very comfortable game for them overall, so I think the biggest thing coming out of this game is not the win, it's the fact that they managed to not have to put forth that much effort and still get a result on the road, which is completely different on the weekend where they didn't put forth that much effort and they lost to West Ham. So they'll be taking a lot of positives from it, obviously. Huddersfield, they've started off the season well enough, so a loss against a top team is not going to really damage their confidence or anything. But I will say, the announcers were saying it too, Huddersfield didn't really look themselves on the day. Because when I've watched Huddersfield in the past, they seem like a team that can upset one of the top teams if the top teams don't come 100% prepared to play. Because they've got the energy, they've got this fight and desire. Maybe it's the exhaustion, maybe playing a lot of games in a row has just really worn them down. But in this game, they really just didn't have it. And you tend to notice this with some of the lower teams. I think I actually talked about this a few weeks ago when I think Arsenal beat them 5-0. Yeah, it's one of those things where they play so well in some of these games because they've got all of this energy and they're just buzzing around the field. They don't necessarily have the quality, but the fight and the desire is there. And it really just puts some of the top teams under pressure that they don't experience all the time. But I think because you don't necessarily have the bench for it, and it's just a lot of games back to back, and every single game is difficult compared to the championship where it's a lot of games back to back, but you've got championship quality you're facing. It's not necessarily as difficult. So I think having to play so many Premier League games in a row can really affect teams like Huddersfield, and you tend to notice a drop off in the second game in a week. They do well on the weekend. I think, yeah, they beat Brighton 2-0, easily handled them, and then they come midweek and just get easily beaten by Chelsea, and Chelsea didn't even have to get out of first gear. So, yeah, I do think they need to look at possibly getting maybe a couple backup players in January just to sort of give them a bit more depth. So whenever they do have to play so many games in a row, it's not going to hurt them as much. And then the last game on Tuesday was Crystal Palace versus Watford. Huge, huge, huge result for Crystal Palace. Finally getting a win against a team that honestly has looked good most of the season. But for Watford, though, I have to go back and look because I want to be sure. Yeah, this is two red cards in a row. I don't know if the red card was deserved. I didn't get to see it. I know it was cleverly they got the red card. But, I mean, they were up 1-0 for most of the game. It looked like it was going to be another just Palace can't finish performance, but then cleverly gets the red. A couple minutes later, Palace equalizes it. Last seconds of the game, into stoppage time, they managed to get a winning goal. So Watford will be looking at the past two games and saying, this is two games in a row where we've only lost by one goal. They lost 1-0 to Burnley away. They lost 2-1 to Palace away. And the red cards really, really hurt. I don't know if either of them are deserved. I didn't get to see either of those red cards, but I mean, that's still something that you got to look at and say, why are we getting red cards? Are we not keeping our heads enough? I know the one this past weekend was straight red. This one was two yellow cards from Cleverly, so it could have just been two professional fouls. But still, why are you making that second foul when you're already on a yellow? So I look at this and I say for Watford, because they've started so well, it's not like they're going to. It's not like they're in panic mode right now. They are not really that close to the bottom, but it is kind of concerning that this is two games in a row where they've dropped points, all 3 points, because red cards. That's Marco Silva. He's a manager that I haven't really noticed him as far as red cards are concerned. When he was a whole last season, I didn't really see them getting a lot of red cards. I thought they were very disciplined. So I don't think this is part of his tactics. I don't think this is part of his system. And I have to wonder if these players, are they starting to fall out of his system? Are they not buying into it as much anymore? I don't know. I doubt it because, I mean, you look back and they tied Spurs 2 weeks ago. So it's not like they're really doing poor over the past several weeks. It's been just these past two games have been a little bit disappointing for them. And I think going forward, they got to really look and make sure that this doesn't become a habit. This habit of getting a red card, losing games that you really should at least get a point from. But I guess it really depends from here on out. How does this affect them in the next few games? Is it one of those things where these two games they play poorly, they get red cards, they lose, but then the next two games they play great again, and then they win the next two games like 3-0 easily? Who knows? But I do think they do need to sort of check themselves before things get really difficult for them. And then obviously for Palace, getting a win at home, very crucial for them, especially against a team like Watford. But not just that, to see the fight back as well. To come back from 1-0 down, manage to get 2 goals late on and win it. I mean, it's a huge turnaround for them. And I'm sure Roy Hodgson is really going to be just loving life right now. I don't think it's quite done for them yet. Obviously, they've still got a ways to go. But for now, it's kind of, this is sort of the kickstart that they might need to get things really rolling along. Then you get to today's set of matches. First of all, I do want to congratulate Man City, and as a Chelsea fan, obviously, I hate to say that. And as a Pep Guardiola, not a hater, but as somebody who just doesn't really find Pep Guardiola that talented as a manager, I think I said last week review that it's not really his system that's working, even though he claims it is. It's more the personnel he has on the field is just really talented, and so whenever they need a late goal, whenever they need a goal to win the game, they have the talent out there. They can sort of mix it up a little bit and then find that goal. That's not necessarily in workings with his system. On top of that, they've had several games over this long win run that I thought they deserved to draw or they deserved to lose, but then the refs sort of helped them out, or they got a lucky goal off a deflection. But with all that being said, sometimes you do need a bit of luck. Sometimes it just happens that way. The call goes your way. The deflection goes your way. Sterling comes out of nowhere. He's done nothing all game, and all of a sudden bends one into the top corner. That's just how it works sometimes in football. So congratulations to Man City on breaking the win record. 15 wins in a row is no small feat. But now the question is, and I do want to look at this because it does kind of make me wonder how long can their win run go. So obviously they've got Spurs this weekend, which is going to be very difficult. Who knows if they'll win that one? They've got Bournemouth the week after, at home as well. Not really a difficult. They should win that one. Then they've got Newcastle away. It could be a difficult one. Going to St. James Park is always a difficult place to go. The crowd can typically turn against you really fast. So it just depends on, I guess, how they start off the game. Then they go to Palace on New Year's Eve. So this is a little run of results where if they beat Tottenham, I have no doubt they can beat Bournemouth. But then can they go on the road and find a result at Newcastle? Can they go on the road and find a result at Palace, who at that point maybe they need a win to keep themselves in the fight to stay out of relegation? I mean, that could be a huge game for them. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how long this win run can go. Maybe it'll end next week or this weekend. Maybe it'll end next weekend. I don't know. But obviously, it's a huge accomplishment for them to go on this long win run. Congratulations to them. So, on to the next game. Well, actually, first, I guess I'll talk about what this means for Swansea. Poor old Swansea. It is a result that, once they did manage to hold them off for a good bit. 30 minutes in the first half, they managed to keep them at bay. They managed to try to create something on the counterattack. It looked like maybe they might be able to pick one off and then just bunker it in, but they couldn't find that final ball, and then Man City get the one goal, and at that point, the game's already done. So I will say there was a lot of fight in Swansea, but ultimately the result goes against them, and that's kind of been the story of their season so far. They've had a couple really good performances where the result just went against them at the end of the day. So, yeah, I think they'll definitely be disappointed to have fallen apart the way it did. I'm sure it wasn't a 4-0 game after 30 minutes. It was a 2-0 game at most. So I'm sure they'll be very disappointed to have let it get it so out of hand. But I see enough fight for them to think that they've got a chance to stay up this season. But so have all the other teams down there too. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out near the end. Then you got Southampton, Leicester. Leicester takes Southampton apart at home too. I mean, for Southampton, it's been kind of a weird season for them because they haven't really looked poor, but they haven't had a good season so far. I mean, I need to look it up to see where they are. I'm pretty sure they're low on the table. Yeah, they're in 11th place right now. And that's not like a good 11th place. That is 11th place that's 4 points away from relegation. I mean, anybody in the bottom half of the table right now is right in that relegation battle. So, yeah, it's kind of been surprising for me that Southampton, who are normally just so solid and so strong, even though they sell a lot of their best players, now all of a sudden, what happened? You sold all your best players. Yeah, but normally the recruitment is there and you have enough players coming through the academy and the academy's really good. Yeah, but they're not as good this year. That's all there is to it. You didn't get the same quality come through the academy that you've had in the past. You sold a couple players that you could use this year, and look where it got you. They've got a couple players that are doing well so far, but it's not enough to keep them in it. And you come to a team like Leicester, Leicester comes to them on top of it, and at home you get dismantled 4-1. It's a sign that the way they're doing things, trying to rely on just selling and then recruiting at a young age, recruiting at a young age, that style just isn't working for them anymore. This season is where things are starting to drop off. Now, does that mean in January they go and buy new players? Possibly. It may sort of change their way of thinking because things are so dangerous for them right now. 4 points away from relegation is scary. So I have to imagine that something's got to give. Either they're going to give and they're going to drop into the relegation battle and be in that bottom three, or the board is going to give and they're going to look at this and say, all right, we can't keep doing these things the same way. We got to change something up. For Leicester, though, great result for them. They've looked really good this season so far. I think they're sitting comfortably mid-table, a decent way away from relegation battles. So I do want to check to make sure so I don't look stupid. They're 8th place. What is that? 12 points away from relegation. They're good. So yeah, they've been playing very well this season. It's just they've had a couple results go against them that I thought were unfortunate. But now they've gotten some results that have started going their way finally. And this is just another result that shows they've got the capability to really fight for those Europa League spots. They finally started to get that momentum back that they had a few years ago when they won the title. It's taken a while for them to get back to that same level. Then you got Newcastle versus Everton. Everton on the rise, possibly. They draw against Liverpool at Anfield, and now they're winning at Newcastle 1-0. Things are starting to look up for him. Rooney scores again today as well, so it's kind of feeling like maybe they're starting to find a little bit of a rhythm. I'm not going to say it's 100% fixed because clearly they still got a long, long way to go. But considering the fact that they went and they bought so many players and so many good players as well, it kind of made me wonder if it was just a matter of the wrong system. Is it maybe just they needed time to really start clicking together? Ultimately, I'm starting to think it was just a time factor. It's one thing to go get all of these players. It's another thing for them to start playing together right away. So I'm thinking that now they're starting to finally find that rhythm. They're starting to really work together a lot better. And I do think it's kind of harsh on Ronald Koeman because he did a very good job this summer of bringing in good players, but he just wasn't given the time for them to really pan out and really start working together well. So I think now we're starting to see the benefits of some of the players that they brought in. For Newcastle, though, 3 points dropped at home, it's not good enough. And they're slowly slipping into that dangerous position. I think they're tied with Southampton on points. I really should just look at the table and sort of have a table up for me so I can look at it. No, actually, they're lower Southampton. They're in 16th, 1 point away from relegation. I mean, that kind of shows you that they've really started to hit that dropping point. So, yeah, it's kind of scary for them, but at the same time, you kind of feel like they do have enough to keep themselves safe compared to some of the other teams down there. It's just they've hit this rough run of form where they've dropped points, they've dropped points, they've dropped points, and then they went from comfortably mid-table to now we're 1 point away from relegation zone. So that's kind of what I was saying earlier on in the season, how a couple of those points that they dropped are really starting to hurt them now. Where, a couple of those draws that should have been wins, you get two of those, now all of a sudden you're 4 points away, that's 5 points away from relegation. That's a little bit more comfortable, still not safe, but that's where it hurts you. So next up, West Ham versus Arsenal. West Ham on the up as well, possibly. I mean, they play very well against Man City and probably deserved to at least get a point away from that, just from the fight alone. They managed to beat Chelsea at home, and now at home they managed to draw Arsenal. Yes, they didn't manage to get a goal. I thought Arnautovic should have had 3 or 4 just from the couple clips that I saw, but kept getting offsides, missed one right in front of the goal. Arsenal obviously had their chances as well, but I think one of the big things for West Ham is I think Adrian in goal is a good option. It's not all of West Ham's problems fixed, but I do think Adrian not only brings some confidence back there, but I do think he's a slightly better keeper than Joe Hart. And I think Joe Hart, he has these crazy antics, he does all these weird things, and he is a keeper that we know, but that can also kind of hurt you out on the field. If he's coming out and doing something crazy, that can hurt you in goal. So I think Adrian has brought a lot more calmness and composure in the back that they've really benefited from. They looked very defensively solid against Man City, which is saying something because they did not look defensively solid against Everton. Obviously, shut out Chelsea, shut out Arsenal. That's a really good London team, and then an okay London team that they've managed to shut out. So obviously, West Ham have started to find that rhythm where they're defensively doing a lot better. Now it's a question of where the goal is going to come from. Arnautovic scored one against Chelsea. He had several chances today but couldn't finish. But that's not enough. You need to have players who can score aside from just that one player who has a bunch of chances and scores one out of all of them. So I think that's got to be the next step for West Ham is finding a goal scorer. Will Chicharito step up and start doing it? I don't know. But for now, at least they finally managed to find a bit more defensive stability, which means they do have a chance to start, getting themselves back up the table. For Arsenal, though, this 2 points dropped away from home at West Ham. Yes, West Ham are looking better, but same argument I had this past weekend when Chelsea lost. I mean, it's West Ham. yes, they're looking better, but you should be good enough to get 3 points. They'll be looking to say, well, at least we didn't lose, and I'll be sitting there saying, but I mean, it is kind of true though. You should still be winning these games, and I do think it's kind of been the story of Arsenal's season where they've looked good, and then drop off in form. They lose to Man U, and then I think they lost again. No, they drew against Southampton, who just got crushed today by Leicester, and now you're drawing against West Ham. I mean, that's two draws in a row after you just got beat by Man U, who you were the better team, you just couldn't finish. This is where the form question starts to be brought up. Will they start dropping off? Who knows? Next up, Spurs Brighton. Spurs win 2-0. Not really much I can say for either team. Spurs have needed to bounce back, and I think they did. Yeah, they easily handled Stoke last weekend, so managing to easily handle Brighton this week, midweek, is it's a sign that they're not as hard off as it seemed after losing a couple games, and all of a sudden everybody's like, what's going on? They're dropping. Well, now this is 2 easy wins in a row. Obviously, they're going to start getting that momentum back. It's just a question of how far can they take this momentum. Is it going to be, 2 games and then now the momentum's gone? Or is this a sign that things are really going to start looking up for them, a couple wins, and all of a sudden they're back in the race for the top 4? We'll see. For Brighton, though, 2 losses in a row, it's getting kind of worrying for them, too. They're one of those teams in the bottom half of the table, and they were a team that looked comfortably mid-table a few weeks ago. So they'll definitely want to start looking to see if they can start picking up points on the road. It doesn't have to be all 3, but they need to start picking up 1 point, and they definitely need to be winning at home if they don't want to get really dragged down in that relegation. Next up, Man U Bournemouth, kind of an expected result. Man U wins 1-0 at home. Kind of wondering, where the goal scoring has gone, because they managed to score 1 against Man City, but that was it. They didn't test their back line as much as they could have, and now they only scored 1 against Bournemouth. Did they test their back line more often? I don't know. I didn't get to see the game. Hashtag boycott gold. But it is kind of a question of, you've only managed to score 1 against Bournemouth? Doesn't seem good enough. So Bournemouth, though, they've really, obviously losing 1-0 at Old Trafford is not the worst result in the world, because you managed to hold them to 1, but yeah, losing is not helping them right now. They need to start picking up points. They've really, really, really dropped down the table. I want to say they're not bottom. I think it's Swansea and then West Ham and then Palace, and I think it's Bournemouth. I just looked at the table, but I'm going to go look again. Oh no, actually they're 2 points off of relegation and 14th. My mistake. So I mean they're still, that's not good enough. 2 points away from relegation is still kind of worrying, but it is kind of a question of where they're going to pick up their points. What are their next fixtures looking like? Well, I'll tell you. They face Liverpool on Sunday. That's going to be a difficult game, even if it is at home. They've got Man City away 2 Saturdays from now. That's going to be impossible for them. And then they've got West Ham at home, and West Ham are looking like they're starting to step up. So, you got 3 difficult games in a row. Man U, Liverpool, Man City, and then you got West Ham. You've got to at least pick up the 3 points at home against West Ham, which is going to be a difficult game. You got to try to pick up at least a point against Liverpool at home, and then you got to hope that you just put up a respectable fight against Man City, because chances are you're not going to really be able to trouble Man City that much. So maybe things will click for them before then, but right now it's kind of showing that it's not quite working out for them. The performances aren't necessarily bad, but the results are definitely not good enough. And then the last game to talk about is Liverpool-West Brom, 0-0 draw. For Liverpool, it's pretty shocking. They are a team that this season have really been it looked unstoppable. I think this may have been the first time that they've been shut out this season. No. Never mind. They've been shut out before. But this is definitely the first time that they've been shut out by a team like West Brom. West Brom, not really a good team. They've really struggled this season. Managed to keep Liverpool to 0 goals. That's not good enough from Liverpool. You've got enough striking capabilities. I'm pretty sure they rested a lot of their starting lineup in the weekend. In fact, Let me look and see what their lineup was today. Maybe that was part of the problem. They just didn't have the players out there. But I'm pretty sure they rested a lot of players against Everton on the weekend. Let's see. Their lineup today, who they have. Yeah, that's definitely not good enough. Um, I'm thinking, yeah. So, I mean, you start off with Salah, Firmino, and Mane up top, with Coutinho, Chan, and Wijnaldum in the middle. Um, I mean, what happened? This it's another case where I wish I could have sort of seen what was going on to see were they creating a lot of chances and just not being able to finish. I did see a couple chances on the whole goal rush thing, but I mean, you've got to finish. I mean, that is embarrassing to have that many talented players out there. You have Salah, Firmino, Mane, and Coutinho all out there, and you didn't manage to score against West Brom. That's a problem. So it ends up not hurting them that much, but then again, it does mean Burnley stays in fourth place above them. They'll be wondering what happened, and they'll be wondering, is this a sign of things to come, or is this just a bump in the road? But yeah, it's pretty shocking to see that they weren't able to score against West Brom today with a lineup like that. For West Brom, though, they a point against Liverpool is not a bad result, but then again, they do need 3 points because they are right there in the thick of the relegation battle. I think they're the team that's tied with Palace and West Ham, but just only ahead on goal difference. So, yeah, it's getting very hectic for all those teams down at the bottom. I mean, the fact that 11th place is 4 points above 16th or 17th, 18th, and 19th is pretty telling to see just what the separation is. But that also kind of makes it a little bit more fun because right now Man City is clearly running away with the title. Man U and Chelsea are behind them, but the only two real challengers, and even then, not really close enough to put up that much of a challenge. And then after that, you've got some teams that are battling for that fourth place spot. But then after that, a lot of the times you just have a mid table gap where they're not really close to relegation, they're not really close to the top four, and so it's just kind of boring to watch those teams play half the time because they're just like, oh well, we're safe, so we don't really have to fight for anything above us or fight to stay out of relegation. But to see that we have, what is that, 10 teams that are right there near relegation, that makes every game super important. Because all of a sudden you lose a game and three teams below you win 3 points. Well, now you were just in 11th place, now you could be in 15th place, and super close to relegation zones. So it's going to make a lot of games much more exciting than probably they would be if the separation was like the bottom three, and then 5 points later you've got the next one, and then 5 points later you got the next one. No, it is very close down at the bottom, and that's going to make it much more exciting come, halfway through the season. We got all these games coming up. They're going to be fighting for every single point they can get, so it's going to make it difficult on the top teams. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on this midweek? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Premier League week reviews, and I'll see you guys the next week. Peace out.